November 13th, early morning. Flight 217, en route from Washington, D.C. to Chicago, took off as usual. The 187 passengers and 6 crew members were settling in for what seemed like an ordinary journey. As the seatbelt sign turned off, there was a slight movement in the cabin. Passengers flipped through magazines, some sipped their coffee, while others gazed out at the clouds. But no one knew that in just a few minutes, they would face the biggest nightmare of their lives. At the back of the plane, by the window, sat James Carter, eyes closed, lost in thought. The 52-year-old man was a former fighter pilot who had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Since retiring from the military, he had tried to live a quiet, ordinary life. But escaping the past was never truly possible. Just then, he felt a slight tremor in the plane. It seemed like mild turbulence, nothing to worry about. But within seconds, everything changed. Suddenly, a loud explosion came from the left engine. The metal screeched, echoing through the aircraft's body. The plane shook violently, passengers screamed, and overhead compartments burst open, spilling their contents. Oxygen masks dropped down. Flight 217 was rapidly losing altitude. A smell of burning oil and electrical smoke spread through the cabin. The explosion had torn apart several parts of the left engine, leaving a gaping hole on its side. Critical flight systems began to flicker, and fuel was leaking rapidly. James immediately grasped the severity of the situation. This was not a minor technical issue. His instincts kicked in. If the pilots lost control, no one would make it out alive. But the real disaster was yet to come. One of the flight attendants, Sarah, was frantically trying to contact the cockpit via intercom. There was no response. Her eyes were filled with fear. "Sarah, we can't reach the pilots. We need to get into the cockpit." James quickly stood up and moved to Sarah's side. "James, I'm a former fighter pilot. If the pilots have lost control, we need someone who can land this plane safely." Sarah hesitated but then nodded. They rushed toward the cockpit door. When they finally managed to open it, what they saw sent chills down their spines. The captain was unconscious. The first officer was sweating and frantically pressing buttons. "First officer, we lost the engine. The plane is not responding." James quickly assessed the situation. This plane was in a nosedive, and if they didn't act fast, everyone would die. Without hesitation, he slid into the empty pilot's seat and examined the controls. "James, I was a fighter pilot. If you trust me, I can land this plane safely." The first officer hesitated but had no choice. "James, deploy the flaps, we need to control our speed. A slow but steady descent is our best chance." The first officer followed James' instructions. The plane was still dangerously unstable, but at least they weren't in a complete freefall anymore. Then a new threat emerged. Flight 217 had been marked as an unauthorized aircraft in Washington's airspace. Fearing a possible terrorist attack, the Pentagon scrambled fighter jets. A stern voice suddenly crackled through the radio. "Military pilot. Flight 217, alter your course immediately, or you will be shot down." James' breath caught in his throat. If they got too close to Washington's critical areas, they would really be taken down. He quickly grabbed the radio and spoke with a clear, authoritative tone. "James, this is former Air Force officer James Carter. We are not terrorists. The plane has suffered a major technical failure. We need an emergency landing." The Pentagon was not convinced. Within minutes, 2 F-16 fighter jets had flanked Flight 217. If James couldn't persuade them, the plane would be shot down. James had to think fast. If he couldn't convince the military pilots, 193 innocent people would die. He grabbed the radio again and issued a firm order. "James, listen to me. If you want to board and inspect the plane, you can do it after we land. But if you shoot us down, you will be responsible for the deaths of 193 innocent people." A tense silence followed. Then a new voice came over the radio. "Air traffic controller. Fighter jets are standing down. James Carter, land the plane as soon as possible." James took a deep breath. Now he just had to stick the landing. Using all his skills, James guided the plane. One engine was completely destroyed and control surfaces were damaged. But his years of fighter pilot training had prepared him for moments like this. He directed the aircraft toward an emergency landing strip outside Washington, D.C. The wheels hit the runway hard, the plane shook violently, but it didn't crash. James activated the brakes, and Flight 217 finally came to a full stop at the end of the runway. A moment of silence filled the cabin. Then thunderous applause erupted. The passengers cheered for the man who had just saved their lives. As passengers disembarked, a wave of relief washed over everyone. James was hailed as a hero, but he refused the title. "James, I just did what needed to be done. The real heroes are the ones who protect this country every day." But everyone knew the truth. Had James Carter not been on that plane, Flight 217 would have ended in disaster. From that day on, his name was etched into American aviation history in golden letters. And so, one of the greatest crises in Washington's airspace was averted, thanks to the courage of one man. What would you do in a situation like this? This brings us to the end of the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell.